Have you ever been blessed with the opportunity to be a guest on somebody else's podcast? Or are you looking to get booked on other people's podcasts to build your brand and profit from podcasting as a lead generation strategy? Watch this video right now to learn how to be a great guest on other people's podcasts. For the best leadership tips, entrepreneurship advice, and subconscious success strategies to help you stand out fearlessly, build your empire, and crown yourself, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified every Tuesday and Friday when a new video goes live. Hey there, I'm Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and after being on over 150 podcast episodes and having my own podcast, The Princess and the Bee, where we have done over 150 episodes, I have seen both from the podcaster's perspective and the guest perspective what makes a great guest. And the biggest mistake that I've seen people make when they start going on other people's podcasts is they have no idea who they're talking to. What I mean is they're speaking to the wrong audience. So let's say, for example, you have the opportunity to get on somebody else's podcast about business. This is one that I go on to a lot. I go on to a lot of entrepreneurship and business owners podcasts. But there's a very, very big difference between business and speaking to a CEO who has 500 employees and speaking to someone who is just starting their business and the different strategies that go into that. So for example, when I go on to an entrepreneurship podcast, I need to know what audience am I speaking to? Is the entrepreneur's podcast typically speaking to people who are thinking about starting their own business, or people who are have actually started their own business, or people who are actually doing a solid like 250,000 to 2 million in their business, or to CEOs who have 50 to 500 employees. Each one is going to require a different strategy, a different tip or trick. I wouldn't give the CEO who is looking to create a company culture with his 50 employees the same strategies on overcoming imposter syndrome as I would somebody who is just starting out their own business. So the first step to becoming a great guest on somebody else's podcast is know who your audience is. When you know who your audience is, that allows you to connect with them at their level. And the best way to do this is to just ask. To give you an example, one of my communication queens, Lauren Wittig, is a hands-on intuitive healer. So she combines all different sorts of energy medicine and alternative practices to generate healing within her clients. Well, her experience is going to be very different if she's speaking to an audience of people who are already into alternative forms of healing, Reiki energy, and whatnot, versus if she was speaking to an audience where they aren't quite sure of the woo-woo stuff. And so her message is going to have to be a little different depending upon who she's speaking to and what audience she's in front of. Secondly, to be a great guest, you have to know your story. So your story in some way is going to parallel or guide or give insight to those strategies that will serve your audience who you're speaking to. Again, why you need to know step number 1, know your audience. Your story is going to guide in some way. So if you know what parts of your story will serve the audience that you're speaking to, you lean into those parts of your story. So for example, to go back to being on an entrepreneurship podcast for me, I know that I'm going to speak to certain levels of performance enhancement and to company culture creation and values alignment and I'm going to use examples from my story. Like, for example, when I was the president of an e-commerce company, and there was a values mismatch between me and my business partner. That is a powerful point that I can use in my story to incorporate into that podcaster's audience. It will serve that podcaster's audience of CEOs who are looking to create a holistic, aligned company culture. Versus if I was speaking to a podcast where their audience was more new business owners, where they're just going through the doubt and the imposter syndrome of getting started, I would probably share a different stage of my story where I would share the stage where for a year and a half in my business, I made $0 because I was stuck in doing productive procrastination. And to learn more about how you can go from $0 with a baby to a profitable multi-six-figure business, watch this video next. And step number 3 to becoming a great podcast guest is know the strategies, tips, tricks that will serve at the level that your podcast audience is at. So like I said, some pieces of your story are going to serve one audience and other pieces of your story may serve a different audience. The same is true for the knowledge, tips, tricks, strategies that you share on those podcasts. So it's up to you to know what strategies will best serve a podcaster's audience depending upon where they are in their journey. So for example, if I was speaking to an entrepreneurship podcast with a CEO who has a team of 50 and they're looking for more company cultures and values alignment, I would speak to doing different exercises and strategies than I would to the new business owner for overcoming doubt, imposter syndrome, and whatnot to starting their business. The tips and tricks that I would give would be very different based on who the audience is. So be the expert that you are and have the versatility and flexibility to adapt the strategies, tips, and tricks that you give based on whose audience you are speaking to. And speaking of adapting strategies, tips, and tricks, if you want to know a dialed in strategy to help you profit from guest podcasting, then definitely get your booty in on the waitlist for Communication Queens. Communication Queens is my 8-week group coaching program where I will walk you through the step-by-step 7-part framework to get you set up, showing up, standing out fearlessly, sharing your story, serving, selling, and eventually, should it be aligned, starting your own podcast, all of which at each stage, I will show you how to profit from being a guest on other people's podcasts and how to profit from having your own podcast. If that speaks to you, if you're like, that is a strategy I want in my business for the stage that I am in, and I loved Kimberly's story, which you can watch here, on how I started Communication Queens and what brought me to $70,000 in new business revenue from only 50 interviews, then definitely put your booty on the waitlist for Communication Queens. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. As always, my fellow sovereigns, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now. Watch these videos next to learn more about how you can be a guest on other people's podcasts. I'll wait for those noisy cars to go by. Noisy! Rude. And if you like this video, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and share it with your friends. For the